Getting it real with RealChunWai on the hottest topics, frank, engaging and candid. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It will certainly be an uphill task for Tawfik Ismail to unseat Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, the UMNO president in Bagan Dato' in the coming general election. What is the end game of this former MP for Bernard Johor? Please welcome
Malaysia
Tawfik
and followers
Ismail.
from around the world. Our guest for tonight is Tawfik Ismail, my friend, who is a former member of parliament for Bernard Johor. He is the eldest son of the respected former Deputy Prime Minister, the late Tun Dr. Ismail Abdul Rahman. Tawfik is an outspoken activist and an advocate for moderation. He'll be among the lineup of Gerak Independent. He is in the news following his decision and announcement to contest against Ahmad Zahid Hamidi in Bagan Dato', Perak. And his campaign line is Rakyat versus Rasuah. Please welcome Tawfik.
Hello.
Hi, Tawfik.
Hi, RealChunWai.
Okay, now we shall move on straight to our conversation.
Sure.
Now, Tawfik, you have announced your decision to contest in Bagan Dato', Perak. Why specifically against the UMNO president Ahmad Zahid Hamidi in his constituency or anywhere else that he's contesting?
Well, good evening, RealChunWai. I'd like to take the challenge direct to the Malay heartland because the issues affect the way the Malays see themselves internationally as well as nationally. And I think going to the source of the problem is where a possible solution might lie.
Yeah. And Tawfik, you know that when you go to this constituency where the former Deputy Prime Minister, he has done a lot of work there. Obviously, that he has invested a lot of resources there. He has got a large following, and that the odds are heavily against you. So, is it a decision to make a statement, or do you seriously want to be the giant killer, so to speak?
Well, I'd like to do both of the things that you suggested because I think any victory would be meaningful if the target was someone that was visible as well as someone that was worthy. And a worthy target right now on matters of principle is where do we want our future to be with what kind of leader? And if the person that I'm targeting aspires to be the leader of this country, it is my right as a citizen to call him out to justify his existence.
Yeah. Now, Tawfik, you mentioned the Malay heartland. So if you look at the Malay mainstream politicians, Malay mainstream, we're talking about UMNO, Bersatu, PAS, and to some extent PKR, although it says that it's multiracial, but well, it's still very much dominated by Malays. Now, we're talking about Malay heartland. So when we look at the past campaign lines, the narrative used by this Malay narrative is always about demi bangsa, agama, dan negara. And then in the case of PAS, it's always demi ummah. Now, they seem to sort of like shy away, or they're not so strong in speaking up against the corruption, which is the central theme of your campaign. So PAS do not talk about corruption. Some will even say that they look like an apologist when it comes to corruption. UMNO doesn't say much, Bersatu doesn't say much. So when you want to bring this message of corruption to the Malay heartland, although it's just Bagan Dato', but the rest of the country, the rest of the Malay heartland will be listening in to what you're going to say. Why is it that there seems to be very little fire, little passion about the issue of corruption?
This is a very interesting question that you've posed. The problem is that corruption has become something like a culture. And I think it has become something that has been ingrained in the minds of the people who are in this country. And I think we need to shake off that that perception as well as that attitude, because corruption in any form is bad for the individual as well as for the nation.
So Tawfik, in your measurement, in your perception, how entrenched and how bad is corruption in this country?
Well, I think as a member of the media, you have exposed quite a lot of the problems that this country has faced. I think people who are paying taxes need to be able to understand why the money that they've been working hard to earn and which they've given voluntarily to the government has not brought the benefits which they expect.
You know, Tawfik, back to the question of Malay heartland. I do not know whether this is a mere perception or is just a social media narrative that's been created, or whether it actually reflects. So we have this case of the former Prime Minister Najib Tun Razak, who has been convicted of corruption, and yet there seems to be a lot of sympathy for him. And there are even moves that he said he should contest in Pekan. He seems to still have a very strong factor and a strong following. Some will even say that his influence is still very great. Why do you think that someone who's been convicted of corruption, and you have many cases of personalities who have been tainted, and yet they still command a very strong following? Why?
Well, I think the answer to that question lies a lot in the way Malays see themselves in the cultural context. Because for one thing, whenever a leader emerges, a lot of perception has been created, and a lot of the stuff which Najib does as Prime Minister is considered to be good. And a lot of his followers have benefited from his generosity and his largesse. And I think it is very difficult to shake off this feeling of gratitude from people who have received the goods that he's distributed. But I think people tend to overlook the bad side of it, because we are naturally a forgiving people. And I think this is part of the problem which Mahathir describes in his book, The Malay Dilemma, where you know, it's considered to be something that can be justified, because you're talking about things like the common good and all these other concepts. In a Western context, the word corruption and the word graft and all that mean different things to them compared to what it means to the Malays over here.
Do you also feel that, as someone who was an MP, do you feel that some of these strong personalities, these MPs who have been there for many terms, while those in Bangsa, those in urban areas, look at these figures quite differently, but in their own kawasan, they're actually very well respected and supported, because is it correct to say that they actually take care of their constituency very, very well? And as a result, you have these followers who sort of even reverend them and respect them. Is that something that you see all the time in your experience as a former MP?
Well, as you go through the UMNO system, which is the system that I was trained for in the 80s, when you look at grassroots politics, it's very, very micro. And you would look at very common problems which to a city folk seem very mundane, but things like clogged drains, water supply, electrical supply, these are things that matter to the rural people that have not experienced it. So anyone that comes and provides these kind of comfort to the rural people will be hailed as a hero. And that's why if you go to a rural area during elections and you look at the way the campaigns are fought, you will see that very basic promises are made for basic infrastructure, which a lot of people in towns and in other developed areas take for granted. But because of this dependency syndrome that has been built up, the party looms larger than life, and the person leading the party tends to be someone that is looked up to as a savior. And I think this kind of a dependency is something which we need to educate the people about. Because do you thank the ATM machine for giving money to you from your own bank account, for example? You know, these are things which you need to explain to people, that that the money that they receive is not from the person who gives it. It is part of a bigger pool of money that is contributed by many people.
And of course, we talk about the structure of old big parties like UMNO. And in some ways, Bersatu has actually become very structured and very well organized, a very strong machinery that includes PAS, has got its division and branches all over the country. To run a political party, it takes a lot of money. And the question of the patronage comes into play. You mentioned about constituents have been taken care of, they are cared for, and they're grateful. But there's also this larger picture of, their funds needs to be needed to pay for full-time workers, full-time officials, which runs from the branches all the way to the top, which is many layers. From your experience, how would money politics, which is another word for corruption, how do they come into play when it comes to big, well-organized parties like this?
The trouble, I think, is that you identify the party and the government as one entity, when actually they are separate entities. And when the party becomes an employer of the people who are working in government, then you get this problem that you don't know which is public money and which is your own money. Now, when the party goes out to look for money, they ask for donations. But supposing that donation comes from sources that seek to influence the government, then corruption rears its ugly head, because the more money you put, the more favors you expect. So I think this is where there is a syndrome that needs to be broken. I think if the party was canvassing for money, it should be transparent and it should be done in accordance to guidelines and to rules where the giver and the receiver are clearly identified and the amount is public knowledge.
But right now, there's no such guidelines or clarity that exists in Malaysia, right?
Well, this is where there's a gray line between what is given voluntarily and what is asked for, and how it's given and how it's received. So corruption needs to be redefined, as well as looked at as something like a cancer, because it starts something from very small beginnings, but it spreads throughout the whole body, and then by the time you see it, it's too late.
So in your campaign in Bagan Datuk, you have adopted, and you have announced the theme will be Rakyat versus Rasuah. How would you want that message to be conveyed during the campaigning?
Well, I think a lot of the way, the way that it has to be conveyed is by example, and as well as by specific use of where people expect money to go. So, for example, you can explain to the rural people that the money that should have gone to their schools, to their drains, to the upkeep of their roads, is not there because of such and such a factor. That this money has gone into someone's handbag or someone's jewelry, these are this is the way that you explain it in very, very simple terms, because corruption is a sin that is easily recognizable but harder to describe, especially when it comes to big money that is given without identifying where the source is or who the receiver should be.
Compared to previous years and previous elections, where the media is more regulated, okay? But now, because of social media, everybody has got access to a lot of information, whether the information is real or fake, but there's a lot of information. Most of it is freely discussed. Do you think that this time around, we saw some of it in G14 and G15, there's really not much of a rural area left in Malaysia. Even in those that's isolated areas, the internet is quite easily available. How do semi-rural or semi-urban voters look at corruption now? What is the perception? How do they deduct it?
Well, this is a very interesting point that you brought out, because the growth of infrastructure in this country has reduced what we call the rural areas, and Bagan Dato is just as much as close to KL as let's say Malacca is to KL. Anywhere along the North-South Highway is considered to be urban. So the flow of information and the flow of traffic is something that is very obvious to the people living in the villages in those areas. So it's easier to convince and talk to people about progress or whatever it is that we need to explain.
Now, still on the subject of campaigning Rakyat versus Rasuah, obviously that this kind of line does not just involve politicians or like you or activists, involves Rakyat as well. That everybody should be involved to fight against corruption is everybody's role. One way, of course, is that in sermons, let's just say in mosques or even in churches or in temples, okay, do you feel that influential figures are able to play their role to speak up against corruption? Would you want to see the khutbah or the church services, to openly speak up against corruption in a run-up to the election?
Yes, indeed. In fact, I'm quite impressed by the way the Perak religious authorities conduct the Friday sermons, where they preach about good governance and corruption. And I think this is something which all the states should emulate, because it is something which is a grassroots problem. And I think the Friday sermons are the best way of transmitting the information that you want to convey.
Now, since we are talking about religion, why do you think that PAS, which has been using the religious platform, why is it when it comes to corruption, it seems to be really coy about it, it seems to be quite evasive about it, and at least in one or two instances where the party president, Hadi Awang, seems to even be seen to be like justifying why?
Well, it's hard to read what's in the mind of the past leaders, because when your mind is clouded by too much theory on religion and too much justification of everything under religious pretext, then you tend to confuse not just yourself but also the other people who are looking at you. So I think PAS itself is a very confused party when it comes to the constitution, whether it comes to religion, whether it comes to receiving money, how it's being spent, and even in their own role in government. I think PAS has a very, very steep learning curve when it comes to these kind of matters.
What would you want the media, how it should play its role? For example, Sinar Harian, through its Rasuah Buster campaign, has been around for 1.5 years, and I think it's really encouraging. But of course, at the end of the day, here we're speaking in English, but the reality is that using the Bahasa medium is the most important to reach the heartland, and that the Malay media is really essential for this campaign to be successful. How would you want the Malay media to play its part?
Well, I think the Malay media has a very big role to play in disseminating information from different perspectives with regards to ethics, with regards to what is right, what is wrong. I think the level of transparency among the Malay masses is great, in the sense that the level of education of the kampong people who send their children to universities and to schools, I think the feedback is greater than what most people know, because otherwise you would not have got the results from the last general election. So that shows that there has been awareness about the level of corruption and also the evils of corruption.
One significant factor in this election, of course, would be the emergence of the young voters. This Undi 18. How would you think that they will play their part, or how decisive would it be in G15, in your perception?
Well, of course, it's very important because every generation has a different experience from the previous generation, and what they bring to the table is something which is very important because these are the people that you expect to sacrifice their lives for the country, the people that earn the money to pay the tax that pay for your basic amenities. I think it's a very important voice. So I would listen very closely to what they have to say.
So in your case, when you are campaigning in the Bagan Datuk, how would you want to reach the young voters, or for that matter, the line up from the Gerak Independent? Would there be greater use of social media to reach out to the young voters?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would not underestimate their intelligence. I would speak to them as I would speak to you right now, in very clear and decisive terms as to what kind of message I'm trying to bring across. Because apart from this Rakyat versus Rasuah message, I want to bring up the question of Maruah Malaysia, national pride. I mean, what do you see yourself as a citizen of Malaysia? How do you want the world to look at you? I mean, these are questions which, as a young person, you would be quite conscious of because you're exposed to the media through the internet, through a streaming media like Netflix and YouTube and all that. And you know, broadcasting and the media is no longer the preserve of the government. It is a public thing. I mean, the way that you and I are talking right now, we are not reliant upon TV3 or RTM or any of those giants. We are doing it across the table to get our message across to each other. And this is the way communication is done with the grassroots.
Now, can you share with us a little bit about the lineup of Gerak Independence? You have announced your decision to contest in Bagan Datuk. Siti Kasim has announced her decision to contest in Batu. What about the rest of the other independents? How many areas are you looking at?
Well, there are 5 of us in Gerak Independent. One in Sabah, Remy Majemkin. And then Roland has not decided whether he will contest. Sorry, there are 6. And then the other 4 in the peninsula, myself, Siti Kasim, KJ John, and Ravi Suntralingam. Although they've announced their constituencies, nomination day is still not decided yet. So there could still be some changes.
I see. Yeah. So as far as this lineup is concerned, it's just the 2 of you all who have announced the constituencies.
Yes, but even then also, I think in the case of Siti, there might be a change in where she's standing, but that's up to her. In my case, I'm very focused on getting my target because I think I need to get the message across that we need to stymie the problem in the bud.
Okay. In your case, we can assume that we were not sure previously who was contesting against Ahmad Zahid in Bagan Datuk.
Yeah, I seem to be the only one that's come up with a challenge to him.
Now, you have said that your decision to contest in these areas, is not to split the opposition votes. It's not to split the votes of PKR or DAP. But you know that you can't run away from all these things. I mean, it's not just you, but the other contenders from Gerak Independent. There are bound to be some cases where votes will run away or votes will be split because of that. How do you reconcile with that kind of split?
Okay, I think this has been talked about quite passionately by the social media. I'd like to say that when it comes to nomination day, everything is up for grabs. There's no such thing as a seat that belongs to this party or that party. It's up to the electorate to decide. And given party politics, sometimes you might be in love with UMNO or MCA or any of the Barisan parties or any of the Pakatan Harapan parties, but you might not agree with the candidate that is being put up, because the guy might have a personality problem in that constituency, which the party might not be aware of. But you put him up there in any case, and you expect that the party the loyalists in the party to support him. But that's not fair. So what you've done is you perverted democracy in that sense. What the independents have done is to give the electorate a choice in terms of character, not in terms of party platform. So you can choose a candidate based on character. It's probably the better way to go, given our experience in the last year since the last elections. 222 candidates, 222 members of parliament. Who do you trust? Have they done the work that you voted them for? And if they don't, then something's wrong with the party, you know.
You know, Tawfik, one of the things which I keep on hearing in this election, at least for now, is that many Malaysians are just suffering from political fatigue. They're very tired, they're very jaded, and they think that, well, all parties are the same. I might as well just go for my holiday and not vote, you know. So when it comes to this kind of circumstances, this kind of sentiment, this kind of perception, do you think that then the independence may actually be something that is worthwhile for voters to deliberate or to think about, given that they're quite fed up of the mainstream parties?
Well, there's always this question of how excited can you be in a general election. So my challenging Ahmad Zahid Hamidi has stirred up some kind of interest and probably some kind of excitement. And I'm hoping that the people in Bagan Dato will be entertained, and I will try to do my best to make it an election to remember.
Now, this I just want to have this question, okay? I mean, when people think of independence, you don't have a machinery, you don't have people in that kawasan to back you up, or any kawasan which Ahmad Zahid is contesting, you lack the machinery. What would be the strong point or the weak point, the obstacles or the strong point for independents like you contesting in the GE?
You're talking about how I intend to campaign, or?
Yeah. How you and Siti Kasim intend to campaign? Because unlike the mainstream parties, they have all the machinery, they have all their supporters in that particular kawasan. They know exactly which particular street to go. Or this is a black area, don't go there, don't bother. This is a gray area, let's go and contest. This is a white area, sure we get a vote. So, you know, the kind of all-star campaigning, which you know that everything is laid out for you, but you're going to this area which is so big. I mean, especially for those contesting in Klang Valley, I mean, the kawasan is huge, okay? How would you go, given the limited resources and time that you will have?
Yes, well, these are questions which we need to face right now. And I think when it comes to campaigning, we need to be able to use any media which is available to us in any form whatsoever to get the message across, which means that we need volunteers, we need people who are committed to the same kind of things that we are committed to spread our message. And we probably need to go on a cadre system where one helper tries to influence maybe 10 households. So that's the kind of network that we hope to raise in the next few weeks.
Okay, Tawfik, one final message to all Malaysians and to the viewers who are watching this. What is your message to them before we sign off?
Well, my message to them is, if you are very conscious about your nation's image and the image that you have of yourself, your self-respect, and you feel that this could be a better nation, then please, when you go to the polls, look at the character of the candidates that are on offer and choose the best among them.
Thank you, Tawfik, for coming on board tonight. We appreciate that you find time to share your thoughts and your decision to contest in Bagan Dato'. We wish you all the best, and we hope to catch up as the campaign starts in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
And Tawfik, good night.
Thank you.
And to all Malaysians, stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Thank you.